The space station Harmony's Edge floated silently in the dark void between star systems. It was a massive metal structure built for one purpose only. Here, different alien species could meet without fear. The neutral zone belonged to no single government or empire. Today it would host the most important dinner in human history. Ambassador Jiwan stood in front of the large viewing window in her private quarters. She watched the stars while thinking about what would happen in just 2 hours. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass. A woman in her 40s, with short black hair and tired eyes. She had spent 3 years preparing for this moment. Behind her, Minho paced back and forth across the small room. He was the cultural attaché for the human delegation. His job was to explain human customs to alien species. Today, he felt more nervous than he had ever felt in his life. What if we make a mistake? Minho asked for the 10th time. What if they think our food is disgusting? What if we accidentally insult them? Jiwan turned away from the window. She had asked herself the same questions many times. We have studied their culture for months. We know they value precision and order above everything else. We will show them respect. The door chimed softly. Chef Hyona entered carrying a small tablet in her hands. She was younger than the other two, maybe 30 years old. Her chef uniform was spotless white. She had been cooking for 12 straight hours. The meal is ready, Hyona announced. Her voice was calm, but Jiwan could see the excitement in her eyes. I have prepared 6 different dishes. Each one represents a different part of Earth's culture. Jiwan nodded. She trusted Hyona completely. The chef had volunteered for this mission when others had refused. Most humans were afraid to cook for aliens. What if the food made them sick? What if their taste was completely different from human taste? But Hyona was different. She believed that food could bring people together. She had spent her whole life learning to cook dishes from every culture on Earth. Korean bulgogi, Italian pasta, Mexican tacos, Japanese sushi, Indian curry, French bread. She knew them all. Tell me about the menu one more time, Jiwan said. Hyona smiled and looked at her tablet. I start with Korean kimchi soup. It is warm and welcoming. Then Italian pasta with herbs from our home gardens. After that, Mexican rice with mild spices. For the main course, Japanese grilled fish with Korean barbecue sauce. Then Indian vegetables cooked in coconut milk. Finally, French chocolate cake for dessert. Why did you choose these foods? Minho asked. Each dish tells a story about humans, Hyona explained. We take ideas from different places and make them new. We are not afraid to mix things together. That is what makes us special. The 3 humans made their way to the main dining hall. The room was enormous with high ceilings and walls made of clear material. Outside, the stars shone like tiny diamonds. In the center of the room sat one large round table with 8 chairs. 4 chairs were for humans. The other 4 were built specially for their alien guests. The Velkari had very different bodies from humans. They were taller and thinner with long arms and legs. Their skin looked like blue crystal and changed color. Based on their mood, Dr. Sunwoo was already waiting at the table. He was the team's alien biology expert. His job was to watch for any problems during the meal. He carried medical equipment in case something went wrong. Any last-minute advice? Jiwan asked him. Remember that they can smell emotions, Dr. Sunwoo said quietly. Try to stay calm and happy. They will know if you are afraid or angry. At exactly 7 o'clock, the main doors opened. The Velkari delegation entered the dining hall. Jiwan had seen pictures of them before, but meeting them in person was different. They moved with perfect coordination, like a dance. Their crystal, blue skin reflected the lights in the room. The leader walked in front of the group. This was Quelnath, the Velkari Empire's chief diplomat. Quelnath was very old by human standards, maybe 200 years. But for a Velkari, this was middle age. They could live for over 500 years. Quelnath's skin was pale blue with no patterns. Dr. Sunwoo had explained that this meant they were calm and focused. Angry Velkari had red patterns, happy Velkari had gold patterns, sick Velkari had green patterns. "Greetings, humans of Earth," Quelnath said. Their voice was musical and strange. "We are honored to share this meal with you." Jiwan bowed deeply. This was the proper Velkari greeting. "We welcome you to our table, respected Quelnath. We hope this dinner will begin a long friendship between our people." The three other Velkari stood behind their leader. They did not speak. Their job was to observe and protect. Their skin showed the same pale blue color as Quelnath. Everyone took their seats at the table. The Velkari sat very straight with their hands folded. They watched everything with large, round eyes that could see more colors than human eyes. Hyona had learned this fact months ago. She had chosen her ingredients partly based on how they would look to Velkari vision. "We have prepared foods that represent the diversity of human culture," Jiwan explained. "Each dish comes from a different region of our planet." Quelnath tilted their head to one side. "This is interesting. Most species we meet have only one way of preparing food. You are saying that humans have many ways?" "Yes," Minho answered. "Humans live in many different environments on Earth: mountains, deserts, islands, forests. Each place developed its own food traditions. Over time, we learned to combine these traditions." Hyona stood up and brought the first course to the table. The kimchi soup steamed in small bowls. The red color was bright and beautiful. The smell filled the air with spicy and sour notes. Quelnath pulled out a small device that looked like a metal wand. They pointed it at the soup and watched numbers appear on a tiny screen. This was normal Velkari behavior. They tested everything. Before eating, "The chemical composition is complex," Quelnath observed. "I detect fermented vegetables, salt, and capsaicin compounds. Also garlic, ginger, and fish proteins." "That is correct," Hyona said proudly. "Kimchi is fermented cabbage. We let it sit for weeks to develop flavor. The fish sauce adds protein. The peppers make it spicy. The other Velkari used their own testing devices. They whispered to each other in their musical language. Dr. Sunwoo watched them carefully, but they seemed calm. Quelnath lifted the spoon with their long fingers. They took a small sip of the soup. Their skin remained pale blue for a moment. Then suddenly, tiny silver patterns began to appear across their forehead. Dr. Sunwoo leaned forward. He had never seen silver patterns on Velkari skin before. "Is everything all right?" he asked. Quelnath set down their spoon and looked directly at Hyona. "This is remarkable. The flavors change as I taste them. First sour, then salty, then spicy, then sweet. How is this possible?" Hyona smiled widely. "That is the beauty of fermented foods. The different bacteria create layers of taste. No two spoons are exactly the same." The silver patterns on Quelnath's skin grew brighter. The other Velkari stared at their leader with surprise. They had never seen this reaction before. "Please, tell us more about this fermentation process," Quelnath said. Their voice sounded different now, more curious and excited than before, and so the evening began with the first taste of human food changing something deep inside the galaxy's most rigid species. The silver patterns on Quelnath's skin continued to grow brighter as they finished the kimchi soup. The other three Velkari observers exchanged worried glances. Their own skin remained the normal pale blue color. They had never seen their leader display such unusual markings. Hyona brought out the second course. The Italian pasta was perfectly cooked with fresh herbs from Earth's orbital gardens. The green basil leaves and red tomato sauce made beautiful colors against the white ceramic plates. The smell of garlic and olive oil filled the air. "This dish comes from a place called Italy," Hyona explained. "The people there believe that cooking is an art form. They take simple ingredients and combine them in ways that create something magical." Quelanath tested the pasta with their scanning device, just like before. But this time they seemed less interested in the numbers on the screen. Instead, they kept looking at the colors and smelling the aroma. The chemical readings show wheat proteins and plant oils, Quelanath said. But there is something else here, something my instruments cannot measure. What do you mean? Dr. Sunwoo asked. He was taking notes on everything that happened. The smell creates images in my mind, Quelanath replied slowly. I see green hills and warm sunshine. I feel a sensation I do not have words for. Minho smiled. You are experiencing what humans call imagination. The smell reminds you of beautiful places even if you have never been there. The other Velkari looked confused. One of them spoke up for the first time. We do not understand. Velkari do not create false images in our minds. This is not logical behavior. But Quelanath was already taking a bite of the pasta. As soon as the food touched their tongue, more changes happened. The silver patterns spread down their neck and across their shoulders. New colors appeared too. Tiny dots of gold mixed with the silver. This is incredible, Quelanath whispered. The flavors tell a story. I can taste the earth where the wheat grew. I can taste the sunshine that ripened the tomatoes. How is this possible? Ambassador Ji-won felt excited but also worried. She had never heard of aliens reacting to food this way. Are you feeling sick? Do you need medical attention? Sick? Quelanath laughed. The sound was musical and light. I have never felt more alive. These sensations are wonderful. Please, bring more food. Dr. Sunwoo checked his medical scanner. Quelanath's vital signs were actually better than when they arrived. Their brain activity had increased by 20%. Their heart rate was steady and strong. Hyuna brought out the third course. Mexican rice with mild spices and colorful vegetables. She had been careful not to make it too spicy. Most alien species could not handle hot peppers the way humans could. This food comes from Mexico, she said. The people there use corn and peppers and beans together. They have been growing these plants for thousands of years. Quelanath barely waited for the chemical scan to finish. They took a large spoonful of the rice and vegetables. This time the reaction was even stronger. Waves of color flowed across their skin like water. Silver, gold, and now bright blue patterns danced together. I understand now, Quelanath said with excitement. Each culture developed different ways of combining flavors, but they all discovered the same truth. Food is not just nutrition. It is communication. It is art. It is joy. The three Velkari observers began to whisper urgently among themselves. Their pale blue skin started showing thin red lines. This meant they were becoming upset or angry. One of the observers stood up. Honored Quelanath, we believe you should stop eating this human food. Your behavior is becoming unpredictable. Unpredictable. Quelanath turned to look at their companions. Or maybe I am becoming more predictable, more like what Velkari were meant to be before we decided that order was more important than wonder. This statement shocked everyone at the table. Velkari society was built on order and control. They had eliminated chaos from their culture thousands of years ago. No Velkari ever questioned this system. What do you mean? Minho asked carefully. Quelanath set down their spoon and looked at each human in turn. We Velkari were not always so rigid. Long ago, our people created art and music. We told stories and explored new ideas. But our leaders decided this was dangerous. They said creativity led to conflict. So they changed us. Dr. Sunwoo felt his heart racing. Changed you how? Genetic modification, chemical treatments, brain surgery. Over many generations, they removed our ability to think in new ways. They made us calm and obedient. They called it progress. The Velkari observers were now showing bright red patterns all over their skin. They were clearly distressed by their leader's words. You should not speak of such things, one of them said. The ancient chaos was eliminated for good reason. It caused wars and suffering. But Quelnath was not listening. Hyona had brought out the main course, Japanese grilled fish with Korean barbecue sauce. The combination of flavors from two different Asian cultures created something entirely new. As soon as Quelnath tasted the fish, their transformation accelerated. The patterns on their skin became brighter and more complex. New colors appeared that the humans had never seen before. Purple and orange and deep green all swirling together. "This is fusion cuisine," Hyona explained. "We take cooking methods from Japan and flavors from Korea. Two different traditions working together to create something better than either one alone." "Like species working together," Quelnath said. Their voice was changing too. It had more emotion in it, more music. "Humans understand something we forgot long ago. Differences make us stronger, not weaker." The Velkari observers were now standing and backing away from the table. Their skin showed patterns of fear and confusion. "We must contact the ship," one of them said. "Quelnath has been contaminated by human chemicals. They need medical treatment immediately." "No," Quelnath said firmly. "I need to understand what is happening to me. These humans have given me something I thought was lost forever. They have given me back my own mind." Dr. Sunwoo ran another medical scan. Quelnath's brain activity was now 50% higher than normal, but all their other vital signs remained healthy. If anything, they seemed stronger and more alert than before. "What are you feeling right now?" Dr. Sunwoo asked. Quelnath closed their eyes for a moment. "I am feeling possibilities. For the first time in my life, I can imagine different futures, different choices, different ways of being. Is this what you humans call hope?" Ambassador Ji-won felt tears forming in her eyes. She realized they were witnessing something incredible. The rigid, controlled Velkari diplomat was becoming something new, something more like their ancient ancestors who had possessed creativity and individual thought. But she also realized this could be dangerous. If the Velkari Empire saw this as contamination or disease, they might declare war on humanity. They might decide that human food was a weapon that threatened their entire way of life. "We need to be very careful how we proceed," she whispered to Minho. But it was already too late to be careful. The transformation was happening too fast to control, and there were still 2 more courses left to serve. The Velkari observers moved quickly toward the communication panel on the wall. Their skin showed bright red patterns of alarm and fear. Ambassador Ji-won knew they were about to call their ship for help. "Please wait," she said, standing up from her chair. "Let us finish the meal first. Your leader seems healthy and happy. There is no emergency here." "No emergency?" one of the observers replied. "Look at Quelnath. Their behavior is completely abnormal. This is dangerous contamination." But Quelnath was already reaching for the 5th course. Hyona had prepared Indian vegetables cooked in coconut milk with gentle spices. The curry had a beautiful golden color and smelled like paradise. "I want to try everything," Quelnath said. "For the first time in my life, I want to experience new things. Please do not stop me now." As they ate the curry, even more amazing changes happened. Quelnath began to move differently. Instead of sitting perfectly straight like all Velkari, they relaxed in their chair. They used their hands to gesture. While talking, they even smiled. "This spice mixture tells another story," Quelnath said between bites. "I can taste ancient trade routes. I can feel the warmth of tropical sunshine. Humans did not just create food. They created connections between distant places and peoples." Dr. Sunwoo watched his medical equipment with growing amazement. Quelnath's brain was creating new neural pathways faster than he had ever seen. Areas that had been dormant for their entire life were suddenly active and growing. "What you are seeing," Dr. Sunwoo explained to the worried observers, "is not contamination. It is restoration. Quelnath is becoming more than they were before, not less." But the observers were not convinced. One of them managed to reach the communication panel and sent an emergency signal to their ship. Help will arrive soon, the observer announced. Quelnath will receive proper medical treatment. I do not want treatment, Quelnath said firmly. I want to learn. I want to understand how humans created such beautiful complexity from simple ingredients. Hyona brought out the final course. French chocolate cake with layers of cream and berries. It was a work of art as much as it was food. The dark chocolate contrasted perfectly with the white cream and red strawberries. This dessert comes from France, Hyona explained. French bakers spend years learning to create perfect textures and flavors. They believe that ending a meal should be as important as beginning it. Quelnath took one bite of the chocolate cake, and their entire body began to glow, not just their skin, but a soft light that seemed to come from inside them. The patterns of color were so complex and beautiful that the humans could barely look away. Now I understand everything, Quelnath whispered. Food is not just sustenance. It is culture. It is history. It is love shared between people. Humans put their hearts into everything they create. The doors to the dining hall burst open. A group of Velkhari soldiers entered with weapons and medical equipment. They were led by a tall figure whose skin showed the deep blue patterns of high authority. I am Supreme Coordinator Vexthul, the newcomer announced. I have come to retrieve our contaminated diplomat. Ambassador Jiwan stepped between the soldiers and Quelnath. There has been no contamination. Quelnath made their own choice to eat our food. They are an adult being capable of making decisions. Look, at them, Vexthul pointed at Quelnath. Their skin shows patterns we have not seen for 1,000 years. Their behavior is unpredictable and dangerous. They have been infected with human chaos. But Quelnath stood up and faced their superior, without fear. This was completely unprecedented behavior for a Velkhari. They always obeyed higher authority without question. I have not been infected, Quelnath said clearly. I have been awakened. These humans have shown me what we lost when we chose order over wonder. You are proving my point, Vexthul replied. No healthy Velkhari would speak this way. You must come with us immediately for treatment. I refuse, Quelnath said. The words echoed through the dining hall like thunder. A Velkhari had never refused a direct order from a supreme coordinator. It was impossible. It was unthinkable. The Velkhari soldiers raised their weapons, but something strange began to happen. The soldiers who stood closest to Quelnath started showing new patterns on their skin. Faint silver lines appeared on their faces and hands. Stay back from the contaminated individual, Vexthul ordered. The infection appears to be spreading through proximity. Dr. Sunwoo stepped forward with his scanner. Supreme Coordinator, I have been monitoring Quelnath for the entire meal. They are healthier now than when they arrived. Their brain function has improved dramatically. This is not a disease. Then what is it? Vexthul demanded. Evolution, Quelnath answered. For too long we have been less than what we could be. These humans have reminded me of our true potential. More soldiers began showing the silver patterns. They looked confused and uncertain. Some of them lowered their weapons without being ordered to do so. We need to evacuate immediately, Vexthul said. This contamination is spreading faster than we expected. All Velkhari personnel must return. To the ship. Wait, Minho called out. Let us explain what happened here. This does not have to end in conflict. But Vexthul was already backing toward the door. Humans of Earth, you have committed an act of biological warfare against the Velkhari Empire. Your food contains psychoactive compounds that damage alien minds. This will be reported to the Galactic Council as a hostile act. That is not true, Ambassador Jiwan protested. We had no intention of harming anyone. We only wanted to share our culture. Your culture is dangerous, Vexthul replied. It promotes chaos and disobedience. It must be contained. As the Velkhari forces retreated, Quelnath remained behind. They looked at the human delegation with gratitude and sorrow. I am sorry, they said. My people are afraid of change. They will try to punish you for showing me the truth. What will happen now? Hiona asked. They will declare human food a dangerous substance, Quelnath replied. They will try to prevent other species from experiencing what I have experienced. But it is too late. The awakening has begun. Through the viewing windows, they could see Velkari ships gathering in the distance. More were arriving every hour. The incident was growing into something much larger than a simple diplomatic dinner. Ambassador Jiwan realized that humanity was about to face its greatest challenge. They had accidentally triggered a conflict that could change the entire galaxy. 3 days after the dinner incident, emergency sessions were taking place across the galaxy. The Galactic Council had called together representatives from over 200 species to discuss what they were calling the human food crisis. Ambassador Jiwan sat in the massive council chamber on the planet Nexus Prime. Around her, alien delegates whispered in dozens of different languages. Some looked curious about the human food controversy. Others seemed afraid or angry. The Velkari delegation had prepared a detailed presentation. Supreme Coordinator Vex Thul stood at the center of the chamber holding a glowing data pad. His skin showed the dark blue patterns of absolute authority. Honored council members, Vex Thul began. We present evidence that human cuisine contains dangerous psychoactive compounds. These substances cause severe mental instability in exposed subjects. A holographic display showed before and after images of Quelnath. In the first image, they appeared normal with standard pale blue skin. In the second image, their skin blazed with complex patterns of silver, gold, and other colors. As you can see, Vex Thul continued, exposure to human food caused complete personality transformation. The affected individual began displaying erratic behavior, questioning authority, and showing signs of creative thinking. Murmurs of concern rippled through the chamber. Many species valued order and stability above all else. The idea of food that could change personality was terrifying to them. The Zenthari Empire delegates stood up. The Zenthari were tall, gray, beings who valued logic and precision. We support the Velkari position, they announced. Any substance that promotes unpredictable behavior is dangerous to galactic stability. But not everyone agreed. The representative from the Melodian Collective, a species known for their love of art and music, spoke next. We are intrigued by this concept of flavor-induced enlightenment. Perhaps humans have discovered something valuable rather than dangerous. Ambassador Jiwan was finally given permission to speak. She walked to the center of the chamber, feeling the weight of her entire species' future on her shoulders. Honored delegates, she began, we never intended to harm anyone. We shared our food as an act of friendship and cultural exchange. If our cuisine affected Quelnath, it was because it awakened abilities that were already present in their species. You speak of awakening, Vex Thul interrupted, but we call it contamination. You have weaponized your culture. Dr. Sunwoo stepped forward carrying his medical equipment. May I present scientific evidence? He asked. The council allowed him to speak. Dr. Sunwoo activated a holographic display showing brain scans and biological data. These readings show that Quelnath became healthier after eating human food, not sicker, he explained. Their brain activity increased, their physical condition improved. New neural pathways formed that enhanced creativity and problem-solving abilities. But they became disobedient, Vex Thul argued. They refused orders and questioned authority. This is not healthy behavior for a Velkari. A new voice spoke from the back of the chamber. Perhaps the question is whether obedience is truly health. Everyone turned to see who had spoken. It was Counselor Tajan, a human scientist who served as an independent observer for the Galactic Council. He had lived among alien species for over 20 years. I have studied many civilizations, Tajin continued. I have noticed that the most rigid societies often suppress natural behaviors in their citizens. What if human food does not cause mental illness, but rather cures it? The chamber erupted in debate. Some delegates seemed outraged by this suggestion. Others appeared thoughtful and curious. While the arguing continued, Minji, the human linguist, was working frantically in her temporary office. She had been researching Velkari history and had made a disturbing discovery. Ancient Velkari texts described a very different species than the rigid beings they had become. Original Velkari had been artists, explorers, and inventors. They had possessed natural creativity and emotional range. But about 2,000 years ago, something had changed. The texts became more formal and controlled. References to art and individual expression disappeared. The language itself became more limited and precise. Minji realized that the Velkari had not evolved into their current form naturally. They had been deliberately modified to suppress creativity and promote obedience. Human food was not changing them into something new. It was restoring them to their original nature. She rushed back to the council chamber with her findings, but she was too late. The vote had already begun. All delegates in favor of classifying human cuisine as a Class A dangerous substance, please indicate now, the council speaker announced. The chamber filled with glowing lights as delegates cast their votes. Each species had one vote regardless of size or population. When the counting finished, the result was devastating for humanity. 87 species voted to ban human food. Only 43 voted against the ban. 70 delegates abstained from voting. The motion passes, the council speaker declared. Human cuisine is hereby classified as a Class A dangerous substance. No human food may be transported, sold, or consumed outside of designated human territories. Ambassador Jiwon felt her heart sink. This decision would cut Earth off from most of the galaxy. Human traders would be banned from alien worlds. Diplomatic relations would become almost impossible. But the restrictions went even further. The Council also voted to limit human travel to specific space lanes. Any human ship found carrying food would be quarantined and searched. This is not justice, Jiwon protested. You are punishing us for sharing our culture. You are free to keep your culture in your own space, Vexthul replied. But you may not spread it to species who have not consented to be changed. As the council session ended, Minji finally reached Ambassador Jiwon with her research findings. You need to see this, she said urgently. I found proof that the Velkari were artificially modified. Human food is not contaminating them, it is healing them. But it was too late to change the vote. The damage was done. Earth was now isolated from most of the galaxy. However, as the human delegation prepared to return home, they began receiving secret messages. Species from across the galaxy were quietly asking questions about human food. They wanted to know more about cuisine that could unlock hidden potential. The aquatic councils sent encrypted communications asking about seafood preparation. The crystal communes inquired about spice combinations. Even some individual Zenthari were secretly requesting information about human cooking techniques. They have banned our food, Hyona said as she read the messages. But they cannot ban curiosity. Ambassador Jiwon realized that the council's decision might have the opposite effect from what they intended. By declaring human food dangerous and forbidden, they had made it incredibly appealing to species who valued freedom and individual growth. What do we do now? Minho asked. We go home, Jiwon replied. But I suspect this story is far from over. They have tried to contain something that cannot be contained. Word will spread. Others will seek what we have to offer. She was right. Even as the human delegation departed Nexus Prime, secret networks were already forming across the galaxy. Beings who had heard about Quel'Nath's transformation were beginning to organize. They wanted to experience human food for themselves, regardless of what their government said. The Galactic Council had intended to end the human food crisis. Instead, they had started a revolution. 6 months had passed since the Galactic Council banned human food, but instead of ending the crisis, the ban had made things much worse. Secret networks now operated throughout the galaxy, smuggling human cuisine to beings who desperately wanted to experience the transformation they had heard about. Chef Hyona stood in the kitchen of her hidden restaurant built inside a hollowed-out asteroid. The location was secret and constantly moving through space. Only trusted contacts knew how to find it. Her current customers were unlike any she had ever served. 3 aquatic council members sat at specially designed water-filled seats. 2 crystal commune representatives had traveled for weeks to get here. Even a young Zenthari scientist had risked everything to taste human food. "Welcome to Harmony's Kitchen," Hyona said to her guests. "Tonight I will prepare a meal that represents the diversity of human experience. Each dish will unlock different aspects of your natural abilities." The aquatic beings communicated through bioluminescent patterns on their skin. They had learned about human seafood preparation and wanted to experience flavors that enhanced their natural telepathic connections. The Crystal Commune representatives could barely contain their excitement. Their species had once been great artists before their government decided that art was a waste of resources. They hoped human food might restore their creative abilities. The young Zenthari, who called himself Kex, trembled with fear and anticipation. If his people discovered he was here, he would be exiled forever. But he had read Minji's research about suppressed creativity and knew he had to take this chance. Hyona began with a simple dish, Korean seaweed soup with fresh fish and vegetables. As the aquatic beings tasted it, their bioluminescent patterns began to change. Instead of the usual blue and green colors, they started glowing with purples and golds that had not been seen in their species for generations. "I can feel the ocean where this seaweed grew," one of them said through their translator device. "I can sense the currents and the life that surrounded it. This is incredible." For the Crystal Commune representatives, Hyona prepared Mexican food with bright spices and colors. Chilies, tomatoes, corn, and beans combined in ways that created explosive flavors. As they ate, their crystalline bodies began to resonate with musical tones. "We remember now," one of them whispered. "Our ancestors used to sing the crystal caves into beautiful shapes. We had forgotten that creation could be joyful instead of merely functional. But the most dramatic transformation happened with Kex, the Zenthari. Hyona served him Italian pasta with complex herb combinations. As he ate, his gray skin began showing patterns of silver and blue that no Zenthari had displayed for thousands of years. "The logical pathways in my mind are connecting in new ways," he reported with amazement. "I can see solutions to problems that seemed impossible before. But more than that, I can imagine possibilities that do not yet exist." While Hyona ran her secret restaurant, engineer Dong-hyun was leading a much larger operation. He had modified human cargo ships to serve as mobile kitchens. These ships traveled the galaxy's remote trade routes, serving food to beings who could not risk traveling to fixed locations. His current ship, the Spice Runner, was hidden in the shadow of a gas giant where 3 different species had secretly arranged to meet. Dong-hyun prepared different meals for each group, carefully designed to awaken their suppressed abilities. The ship's sensors detected approaching vessels. 3 different alien transports arrived within minutes of each other. The beings who emerged moved carefully and kept their faces hidden. This was dangerous business for all of them. But once they tasted human cuisine, their caution began to fade. The food worked exactly as promised. Rigid species became creative. Suppressed individuals found their voices. Beings who had lived their entire lives following orders began to question and explore. Dr. Sunwoo had established medical stations throughout the underground network. His job was to monitor the beings who underwent culinary awakening and help them cope with the psychological changes. The transformations were not always easy. Some beings experienced severe confusion as they grappled with newly awakened abilities. Others suffered from what Dr. Sun Wu called identity displacement, as they realized how much of their original nature had been suppressed. It is like learning to see color after a lifetime of blindness, Dr. Sun Wu explained to his human colleagues. The new sensations can be overwhelming, but despite the difficulties, very few beings wanted to return to their previous state. Once they experienced creativity, individual thought, and emotional freedom, they could not imagine giving these gifts up. The underground network grew larger every week. Messages spread through secret channels describing the miraculous effects of human cuisine. Beings across the galaxy began to organize resistance movements against their own governments. On the Velkari homeworld, small groups gathered in hidden locations to share smuggled human food. They had learned to suppress their skin patterns in public, but in private they allowed their natural colors to shine. For the first time in centuries, Velkari were creating art, music, and poetry. The Zenthari Empire faced worker strikes as beings who had tasted human food began refusing to perform mindless, repetitive tasks. They demanded more meaningful work that engaged their newly awakened creativity. Even the crystal communes experienced upheaval as individuals who had rediscovered artistic expression began creating unauthorized sculptures and music. The established governments grew more desperate. With each passing day, they increased security measures and offered rewards for information about human food smugglers, but the underground network had become too large and too distributed to stop. Ambassador Jiwan received daily reports about the growing resistance movement. She realized that humanity had accidentally sparked the largest civil rights revolution in galactic history. "We never intended for this to happen," she told her staff during a secure video conference. "We just wanted to share a meal with alien diplomats." "But maybe this is exactly what needed to happen," Minho replied. "Maybe the galaxy has been waiting for someone to show them what they lost." Quelnath had become the symbol of the resistance movement. They traveled secretly from world to world, speaking to groups about the importance of individual freedom and creative expression. Their words inspired millions of beings to question their governments and demand change. "The awakening cannot be stopped," Quelnath declared in one of their underground speeches. "Once you taste freedom, you cannot forget its flavor. Once you experience creativity, you cannot accept a life without it." The resistance movement had 3 main goals. First, they wanted to end the ban on human food and allow free cultural exchange. Second, they demanded the right to genetic and psychological modification reversal for species that had been artificially altered. Third, they called for new governments based on individual freedom rather than rigid control. These goals terrified the established authorities. If successful, the movement would completely reshape galactic civilization. The rigid hierarchies that had maintained peace for thousands of years would collapse. But the revolution was growing too large to contain. Every day, more beings risked everything to taste human cuisine and experience the transformation it offered. The underground network had become a galaxy-spanning movement for freedom and self-determination. The established governments knew they would have to act soon. Either they would find a way to crush the resistance movement completely, or they would lose control of their civilizations forever. The stage was set for a final confrontation that would determine the future of the entire galaxy. 1 year after the first dinner with Quelnath, the galaxy stood on the edge of complete transformation. The underground resistance movement had grown so large that entire planets were joining the revolution. The old governments could no longer hide the truth about what human food actually did. Ambassador Jiwan stood once again in the Galactic Council chambers on Nexus Prime. But this time, the situation was completely different. Half of the delegate seats were empty because those species were dealing with civil wars on their home worlds. The remaining delegates looked exhausted and desperate. Supreme Coordinator Vex Thul was no longer the confident authority figure he had been a year ago. His skin showed patterns of stress and fear. The Velkhari Empire was falling apart as more citizens underwent culinary awakening and demanded freedom. The situation has become impossible to control, Vex Thul admitted to the council. Our security forces are deserting. Our workers refuse to obey orders. Even our own families are eating human food in secret. Similar reports came from across the galaxy. The Zenthari Empire had lost control of 12 colonies where beings had tasted human cuisine and declared independence. The crystal communes were producing unauthorized art on such a massive scale that their entire economy had shifted to creative industries. But the most dramatic change had occurred among the aquatic councils. After experiencing human seafood dishes, their telepathic abilities had increased dramatically. They could now communicate across vast distances and coordinate their resistance efforts instantly. "We have discovered something important," announced Councillor Tajin, who had spent the past year researching galactic history. "The rigid social structures we thought were natural actually began about the same time period across multiple species." He activated a holographic display showing historical timelines for dozens of different civilizations. Approximately 2,000 years ago, most advanced species underwent similar transformations. They eliminated creativity, suppressed individual thought, and established authoritarian governments. "What are you suggesting?" asked the delegate from the harmonic resonance, one of the few species that had remained neutral in the conflict. "I believe there was a coordinated effort to control the development of galactic civilization," Taejun replied. "Someone or something convinced multiple species that creativity and individual freedom were dangerous. This revelation sent shockwaves through the remaining council delegates. If Taejun was correct, then the current crisis was not about human food contamination. It was about the restoration of natural psychological states that had been artificially suppressed." Linguist Minji stepped forward with additional evidence. "I have been analyzing ancient texts from multiple species. The pattern is clear. Before the Great Suppression, these civilizations produced art, explored new ideas, and celebrated diversity. After the suppression, they became focused only on order, efficiency, and control." "But why would anyone do such a thing?" Vex Thul asked. "Because creative, independent beings are much harder to control than obedient, predictable ones," Quelnath said as they entered the chamber. Everyone turned to stare at the transformed Velkhari diplomat. Over the past year, Quelnath had become even more remarkable. Their skin blazed with complex patterns of every color imaginable. They moved with grace and confidence that seemed impossible for a Velkhari, but Quelnath was not alone. Behind them walked representatives from dozens of species who had all undergone culinary awakening. Zenthari with silver patterns, crystal beings who hummed with beautiful music, aquatic representatives whose bioluminescence painted the air with living light. "We represent the Free Species Alliance," Quelnath announced. "We are here to offer the Galactic Council a choice. You can continue to support the artificial suppression of natural abilities, or you can join us in creating a new form of civilization based on freedom and creativity." "And if we refuse?" Vex Thul asked. "Then you will become irrelevant," replied Kex the Zenthari, who had become a leader of the resistance movement. "We no longer need permission from governments that exist only to control us. We are building our own societies." The truth was that the old governments had already lost most of their power. The resistance movement controlled trade routes, communication, networks, and resource production across much of the galaxy. They had proven that creative, independent beings could organize themselves without authoritarian control. Dr. Sunwoo presented medical evidence that supported the resistance position. "We have now studied thousands of beings who have undergone culinary awakening. In every case, their physical and mental health improved dramatically. their lifespans increased, their problem-solving abilities enhanced. Most importantly, they became happier and more fulfilled. But what about stability? Demanded the harmonic resonance delegate. How can civilization function without predictable behavior and clear hierarchies? Chef Hyona stepped forward to answer. Look around this chamber, she said. The old system is already failing. You have civil wars, economic collapse, and social unrest across dozens of worlds. That is not stability. That is the breakdown of artificial control. She activated her own display showing the thriving communities that had emerged in free species. Territory. These societies are more stable than anything the old system produced. When beings are free to use their natural abilities, they create solutions to problems instead of just following orders. The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was inevitable. The old system had already collapsed in most places. The question was not whether change would come, but what form it would take. Finally, Vexthul made a surprising announcement. The Velkari Empire hereby withdraws from the Galactic Council and requests to join the Free Species Alliance. This decision shocked everyone, including Quelnath. Are you certain? They asked their former superior. I have been eating human food in secret for 3 months, Vexthul admitted. I can no longer pretend that suppression is better than freedom. Our people deserve to experience their full potential. One by one, other delegates made similar announcements. The Zenthari Empire dissolved itself and reformed as the Zenthari Federation. The Crystal Communes became the Crystal Arts Collective. Even the cautious Harmonic Resonance decided to allow human food imports on a trial basis. By the end of the session, the old Galactic Council had ceased to exist. In its place, the delegates voted to establish the Galactic Freedom Alliance, with Earth as its cultural center and humans serving as guides for species rediscovering their suppressed natures. The transformation was not complete overnight. Some species took longer to adapt to their newfound freedom. A few isolated governments continued to resist change. But the overall direction was clear. Chef Hyona opened the first legal human restaurant on Nexus Prime 3 months later. The grand opening celebration was attended by beings from every corner of the galaxy. For the first time in galactic history, hundreds of different species gathered together to share food, music, art, and ideas. Ambassador Jiwon gave a speech at the celebration. 1 year ago, we invited an alien diplomat to dinner. We never imagined that meal would change the entire galaxy. But perhaps that is the most human thing of all, to create change through simple acts of sharing and kindness. Quelnath, now serving as the first ambassador of psychological liberation, raised a glass in a toast. To the humans who showed us that diversity is strength, creativity is essential, and freedom is the natural state of all intelligent beings. The restaurant served fusion cuisine that combined culinary traditions from dozens of different worlds. Velkari spices mixed with Zenthari herbs, crystal resonance cooking combined with aquatic fermentation techniques, and human methods that brought everything together. Each dish told a story of cooperation and creativity. Each meal was a celebration of the beautiful chaos that emerged when free beings worked together to create something new. As the evening continued, beings who had never been able to communicate before found ways to share their experiences. Forms emerged that no single species could have created alone. New types of music filled the air as different species discovered harmony in their diversity. Dr. Sunwoo watched the celebration with satisfaction. His medical monitors showed that every being present was healthier and happier than their species' baseline. The awakening was not just psychological, but physical. Free beings lived longer, thought clearer, and felt more joy than their suppressed ancestors. The galaxy had been transformed by something as simple as sharing a meal. But perhaps that was the most profound truth of all, that the greatest revolutions begin not with weapons or politics, but with small acts of connection between different peoples. The age of artificial control was over. The age of creative freedom had begun. And it all started with a human chef who believed that food could bring beings together across the vastness of space. In the end, humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy was not advanced technology or military might. It was the simple wisdom that differences should be celebrated rather than suppressed, and that sharing what you have with others is the foundation of true civilization.